I took off my wedding ring in front of almost 40 people, dropped it into my wife's ex-boyfriend's hand, and said, "Looks like everyone's been right. You can have my job now." The backyard went completely silent. 5 seconds earlier, people had been laughing. Kids were chasing each other through the yard. Burgers were still coming off the grill, and someone was trying to convince my dad that his smoked ribs were better than any restaurants. Then one sentence changed everything. My wife's friend raised her wine glass and smiled at the guy standing beside my wife. "If Tyler ever messes this up," she said, "at least Emma already has her backup husband." A few people laughed. Not because it was funny, because they'd heard it before. My wife laughed too. That was the moment I knew I wasn't hearing a new joke. I was hearing an old one that everyone except me already understood. So I walked over, slipped my ring off, dropped it into his palm, and closed his fingers around it. "There you go," I said. "Apparently you've been interviewing for the position." Emma's face lost all its color. "Tyler, stop." I looked at her. "I'm not the one who started this." Then I grabbed my truck keys and walked out of my own anniversary party. My name is Tyler. I was 36 when this happened, and Emma and I had been married for 6 years. We lived outside Nashville in a quiet subdivision where everyone knew everyone else's dog before they knew their last name. From the outside, we looked like one of those couples people assumed would stay together forever. No kids yet. Good jobs, nice house, no screaming matches, no dramatic social media posts. Just two adults building a life. At least, that's what I believed. I managed commercial renovation projects for a construction company, which meant I spent more time solving other people's problems than paying attention to my own. Emma worked in marketing for a healthcare company. She worked from home most days. We had routines. Saturday mornings meant Costco. Sunday afternoons meant football. Friday nights usually meant takeout and a movie we'd both fall asleep halfway through. It wasn't exciting. It was comfortable. Looking back, comfortable slowly became disconnected. Neither of us noticed when conversations became shorter. Dinner turned into eating while scrolling our phones. Vacations became something we'd plan next year. Neither of us did anything terrible. We simply stopped choosing each other every day. I didn't realize how dangerous that was. Everything started changing about 7 months before the anniversary party. Emma joined a fitness club 15 minutes from our house. Not just a gym. One of those expensive places with trainers, yoga classes, hiking groups, weekend events, and a cafe where smoothies somehow cost $14. She loved it immediately. She had more energy. She slept better. She stopped complaining about her back hurting after work. Honestly, I was happy for her. Then the schedule started changing. Morning workouts became evening classes. Evening classes became group dinners. Saturday workouts became hiking trips. Emma hated hiking. Or at least she used to. When I teased her about it, she laughed. People change. She wasn't wrong. The first time I heard the name Ryan, we were unloading groceries. "I ran into Ryan today." I looked up. "Ryan who?" She smiled. "My college boyfriend." "Oh." I'd heard about him years earlier. They dated almost 3 years before breaking up after graduation. Nothing unusual. Everyone has a past. He moved back here after his divorce. Small world. Seriously. That was the end of the conversation. At least I thought it was. Over the next few weeks, Ryan's name kept showing up. Ryan recommended a podcast. Ryan knew a better hiking trail. Ryan organized a charity run. Ryan introduced everyone to a new coffee place after workouts. It happened so gradually that his name almost blended into normal conversation. If Emma had hidden him completely, I probably would have noticed faster. Instead, she mentioned him just enough to make him seem harmless. The first thing that actually bothered me wasn't Ryan. It was Emma's phone. For years, we'd known each other's passcodes, not because we checked each other's messages. Sometimes one of us drove while the other answered a text or changed the music. Then one night I picked up her phone to order dinner. My fingerprint didn't work. Neither did the old passcode. Emma reached over and took it from me. I had to update everything for work. Your company changed your personal phone? They're stricter about security now. Reasonable answer. I accepted it. A week later, I noticed she had started placing her phone face down. Another reasonable explanation. People do that all the time. I explained every little change away. One by one. My younger brother Jake noticed before I did. He came over one Sunday to watch football. Emma left around noon, wearing leggings, running shoes, and a little more makeup than I expected for a workout. "Gym?" I asked. "And lunch after?" "With who?" "The group." She kissed my cheek and headed out. Jake watched her pull away. "Does she always dress like that for the gym?" I laughed. "Apparently." He didn't laugh back. "What?" "Nothing." "No, seriously." He shrugged. "I just think she's spending a lot of time with that Ryan guy. It's a group." "So, you keep saying. You think something's going on?" "I think you're asking the wrong question." "What do you mean?" Jake grabbed another wing before answering. "I don't think people wake up planning to have affairs." I looked at him. "I think they slowly build relationships they're not supposed to have." I rolled my eyes. "You've been watching too many podcasts." "Maybe." He shrugged. "I just hope I'm wrong." I wanted him to be wrong too. So I stopped thinking about it. A month later, Emma canceled our anniversary dinner reservation. Not because she didn't want to go. She said work had a last-minute project. She sounded frustrated on the phone. I believed her. The next morning, she surprised me with my favorite bakery order before work. "I owe you." "You don't owe me anything. We'll celebrate next weekend." We never did. Looking back, that became a pattern. Plans with me got postponed. Plans with everyone else somehow kept happening. I noticed. I just didn't want to become the jealous husband keeping score. About 3 weeks before our anniversary party, Emma announced she wanted to invite friends from the gym. That surprised me. She usually hated hosting. Now she was making guest lists, ordering decorations, renting tables, and texting people every evening. She seemed genuinely excited. One night, her phone lit up while she was upstairs. I wasn't trying to read it. The screen was facing me on the kitchen island. All I caught was the first line. "Ryan, are you sure he'll be okay with—" Before I could finish reading, Emma walked back in and picked up her phone. What was Ryan asking? "Oh." She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. He wanted to know if everyone from the hiking group was actually invited. "Are they?" "A few." She smiled and changed the subject. I let it go. Again. A few days later, Jake came over to help me hang patio lights before the party. He looked at the guest list taped to the refrigerator. "Ryan's coming?" "I guess." "You invited your wife's ex-boyfriend to your anniversary?" "I didn't." Emma handled the guest list. Jake stared at me for a second. "You really trust her?" "I do." He nodded slowly. "I hope she deserves it." I laughed it off, but that sentence stayed with me longer than I expected. By the morning of our anniversary party, I had convinced myself I was imagining things. Emma seemed happier than she'd been in months. She hugged me while we were setting up tables in the backyard. She kissed me before guests started arriving. For a while, everything felt normal again. I remember thinking maybe I'd let my imagination get away from me. Then Ryan walked through the side gate. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look around. He walked straight into my backyard like he'd already been there before. Ryan spotted Emma before he noticed me. His face lit up the second she waved. Not dramatically, just enough that it looked automatic. She walked over, hugged him with one arm, and touched his shoulder while they talked. It wasn't romantic. It was something worse. It looked practiced. Jake stepped beside me with 2 bottles of beer. "That's him?" I nodded. "He seems comfortable." That was exactly the word. Ryan wasn't acting like someone attending a stranger's anniversary party. He knew where the cooler was. He walked into my kitchen without asking. He carried drinks outside like he'd helped host parties there before. I stood at the grill pretending to pay attention to the burgers while I watched him move around my house. Every few minutes, someone from Emma's gym group stopped to talk to him. They all seemed to know each other well. One woman laughed and nudged Ryan with her elbow. Another guy slapped him on the back. Nobody acted like he was the outsider. I was starting to feel like I was. Emma finally brought him over. "Tyler, you've never officially met Ryan." He held out his hand. "Good to finally meet you." Finally. One word, probably meaningless. Still, it stuck with me. I shook his hand. "You too." He smiled. "Emma talks about you all the time." I looked at her. "I hope that's true." She smiled. "It is." Ryan laughed. "Mostly good things." Everybody laughed except me. It wasn't what he said. It was how easily the conversation flowed. There wasn't any awkwardness between them. No hesitation. No careful distance people usually keep around an ex. Emma got pulled away by one of her coworkers before I could say much else. Ryan stayed beside me. "Great house." "Thanks. You've done a lot with the backyard." I looked at him. "You've been here before?" His smile disappeared for half a second. "No." He recovered quickly. "I've just heard Emma describe it." That answer worked, but not perfectly. For the next hour, I started noticing things I probably would have ignored a month earlier. Ryan already knew Emma's coffee order. When she couldn't find her sunglasses, he pointed to the patio table without looking. He reminded her to grab a sweater after the sun went down. She hadn't mentioned feeling cold. He just knew. Little things. Nothing you could accuse someone over. Everything you remember later. Jake wandered over while I was flipping burgers. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one you get when a subcontractor tells you everything's on schedule." I laughed. "I'm serious." "I know. You seeing what I'm seeing?" "I don't know what I'm seeing." He glanced across the yard. "They've got a rhythm." I hated how accurate that sounded. Not flirting. Not touching. Just familiar. Like two people who had spent enough time together that they no longer had to think about each other. Dinner finally settled everyone down. People spread out across the patio with paper plates balanced on their laps. My parents sat with Emma's parents. Neighbors talked football. Kids were chasing each other with glow sticks. For a few minutes, I actually relaxed. Maybe Jake had been reading too much into everything. Maybe I had too. Then Ryan told a story. It was about getting lost during a group hike. Everybody laughed. Emma laughed the hardest. Halfway through the story, she interrupted him. "No, that's not what happened." "Oh yeah. You forgot the part where I almost walked into poison ivy." Ryan snapped his fingers. "You're right." Then he finished the story. It hit me all at once. I'd never heard that story. My wife had spent an entire afternoon making memories with another man and never mentioned any of it to me. Not because she'd hidden it, because she'd stopped thinking I needed to know. As the sun started going down, Emma stood near the patio with a wine glass. She tapped it gently. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming." The conversations faded. She smiled at me. 6 years ago, Tyler somehow convinced me to marry him. A few people laughed. "He still leaves cabinet doors open." More laughter. "But he's my favorite person." I smiled politely. Then she raised her glass. "To 6 years." Everyone raised theirs. Ryan was standing directly behind her. Close enough that he ended up in every picture people were taking. I noticed Jake watching him too. Then Taryn spoke. Taryn had known Emma since college. She was already on her third glass of wine. She pointed toward Ryan. "Well," she laughed, "if Tyler ever quits, Emma already has a backup husband." A handful of people laughed. Then more joined in. Not loud, comfortable. Like they'd all heard it before. I looked at Emma. She laughed too. Not because she was drunk, because she recognized the joke. I turned slowly toward the rest of the group. Several people suddenly became very interested in their drinks. Nobody looked surprised. Jake quietly muttered beside me, "You've got to be kidding me." I looked at Taryn. "How long has that been a joke?" She blinked. "What?" "The backup husband." Silence. Emma stepped toward me. "Tyler." "No." I kept looking at Taryn. "Answer me." She looked at Emma before answering. I don't know. Long enough that everybody recognizes it." Nobody spoke. Ryan stared at the ground. Emma reached for my arm. "It doesn't mean anything." I looked down at her hand, then back at her. "If it doesn't mean anything..." I glanced around the yard. Why am I the only person hearing it for the first time? She didn't answer. She couldn't, because she already knew the answer. Ryan finally spoke. "It got out of hand." I turned toward him. "So, you've heard it before." He closed his eyes for a second. "Yeah." That single word landed harder than anything else that night. He knew. Emma knew. Their friends knew. I was the only one who didn't. Jake whispered, "Ty." I barely heard him. Emma lowered her voice. "Please don't make this worse." I looked at her. "Worse?" She nodded. "Everybody's watching." I almost laughed. That was her concern, not what I just learned. Who was watching? Slowly, I slid my wedding ring off my finger. Emma's eyes immediately widened. "No." Ryan took a step backward. "Man." I walked straight toward him. He shook his head. "You don't have to do this." "I think I do." I took his hand, placed my wedding ring in his palm, and folded his fingers over it. "There." Nobody moved. "Looks like you've been training for the job long enough." Emma grabbed my wrist. "Tyler, stop. I'm done pretending I don't see what's been happening. It isn't what you think. I haven't even told you what I think." She froze. I gently pulled my arm away. Ryan held out the ring. "I don't want this." "Funny." I looked him in the eye. "You've been carrying everything else." Without another word, I turned and walked into the house. Behind me, I heard Emma calling my name. By the time I reached the front door, she caught up. She grabbed my arm. It was just a stupid joke. I looked through the kitchen window. Ryan was still standing exactly where I'd left him. My wedding ring was still in his hand. I looked back at Emma. Then why did everyone laugh like they'd heard it 100 times? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I picked up my truck keys. "Where are you going?" "Away." "You can't leave." "I already did." Tears filled her eyes. Nothing physical happened. I stared at her. I hadn't asked that, not once. The second she realized what she'd admitted, all the color disappeared from her face. For the first time that night, she looked scared. I drove straight to my younger brother Jake's apartment. I don't remember much about the drive, only that my phone never stopped vibrating. Emma, Emma again, then my mom, then Taryn, then 2 neighbors, then an unknown number. Jake looked at the screen. "Don't answer anybody tonight?" I wasn't planning to. He unlocked his apartment and tossed me a bottle of water. "You hungry?" "No. I'm ordering pizza anyway." That was Jake. He solved emotional disasters with food. Sometimes it actually worked. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Emma. "Please don't talk to Ryan before you talk to me." I read it twice. Jake looked over. "What?" I handed him the phone. He frowned. "That's specific." "Yeah." "Why would she think you'd talk to him?" "I don't know. But she clearly doesn't want me to." A minute later, the unknown number texted again. "This is Ryan. I think you deserve to hear everything from me before anyone else tells you their version." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Well, yeah. You meeting him?" I leaned back on the couch. "I honestly don't know." Jake took a bite of pizza. I think you should. You serious? Very. Why? Because everybody else already has a story. He shrugged. Go get yours. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw everyone laughing. Not loudly, comfortably, like the joke had been around for months. By 7 the next morning, I'd made up my mind. I texted Ryan. Coffee, 9 o'clock, Riverside Diner. His reply came almost immediately. I'll be there. Ryan was already sitting in a booth when I arrived. He stood as soon as he saw me. Thanks for coming. I'm not here for you. I know. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept either. Before I even sat down, he reached into his jacket pocket and placed my wedding ring on the table. I figured you should have this back. I stared at it. I don't want it. He nodded. Fair. Neither of us touched the coffee after the waitress poured it. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. How long? He didn't pretend not to understand. About 6 months. My stomach tightened. Since the gym. Yeah. What happened? At first, he rubbed his hands together. We just talk after workouts. And then, coffee. And then, dinners with the group. Hikes. Charity events. I looked at him. How many times were you two alone? He hesitated. 8. Maybe 10. Far more than Emma had ever mentioned. Were you sleeping together? No. Kissing? No. I swear. His answers came too quickly to sound rehearsed. Then I asked something different. Were you hoping we'd get divorced? He looked down. I told myself I wasn't. And the truth? He let out a long breath. I started imagining it. Neither of us spoke, because that answer was honest enough. Emma talked about you. I looked at him. What exactly did she say? That you worked all the time. That she felt lonely. That she missed who she used to be. None of it was completely false. That made hearing it even worse. Did you ever tell her to talk to me? Yes. And? She'd always say she tried. I laughed quietly. She never did. Ryan nodded. I know that now. He reached for his phone. I want to show you something. He slid it across the table. There weren't hundreds of messages. Most had already been deleted, but enough remained. Emma inviting him to coffee. Emma asking if he wanted to join another hike. Emma saying she wished life had turned out differently. Then one message from 2 weeks before our anniversary. I think we're getting too close. Ryan had sent that, Emma replied. Only if we let other people decide what it means. Another message followed. Come to the party. It'll prove everyone's overreacting. I handed the phone back. So she invited you? Yes. She told me somebody else did. I know. He looked embarrassed. I almost didn't come. What changed? I thought maybe seeing both of you together would remind me this wasn't my place. I looked at him. Did it? No. His honesty made it difficult to hate him the way I'd expected. He wasn't innocent, but he wasn't lying anymore either. Before leaving, I asked one last question. Did she ever tell you she loved you? He waited several seconds. Once. I already knew the answer before he spoke again. She said. He swallowed. Part of her never stopped. I closed my eyes, not because it surprised me, because it confirmed everything I'd been trying not to believe. When I walked outside, Emma was leaning against my truck. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen from crying. You met him? Yeah. What did he say? What didn't he say? She lowered her head. I'm sorry. I know. No. She shook her head. You don't. She looked at me for the first time. I've been apologizing for getting caught. Not for what I actually did. I didn't answer. Because she was finally telling the truth. I kept telling myself nothing physical happened. She wiped her eyes. So I convinced myself I wasn't betraying you. You were. I know. I know that now. We drove separately to a park nearby. Neither of us wanted another audience. We sat on opposite ends of a bench facing a small lake. People walked dogs along the path. Kids played on a swing set. Everything around us looked painfully normal. Emma spoke first. I was lonely. I know. I felt invisible. I know. I didn't wake up trying to replace you. I believe that. She looked surprised. You do? I think you replaced us one decision at a time. She stared at the water. I kept moving the line. What do you mean? Coffee wasn't cheating. No. Texts weren't cheating. No. Meeting for lunch wasn't cheating. No. She looked down. So every new step felt just as harmless. I nodded slowly. Until you were protecting another relationship. She started crying again. I hate how true that is. I finally asked the question I'd been carrying since the party. If Taryn hadn't made that joke, I looked at her. Were you ever going to tell me? Emma didn't answer. 30 seconds passed. Finally, she whispered, I honestly don't know. That hurt more than every message Ryan had shown me, because for the first time, she wasn't lying. She truly didn't know whether she would have chosen honesty. I stood. She looked up. So, what happens now? I need time. How much? I don't know. She nodded slowly. I'll wait. I looked at her. I didn't ask you to. As I walked back to my truck, I realized something. The hardest part wasn't learning another man had become important to my wife. It was realizing she'd spent months sharing every fear, every frustration, and every piece of her heart with everyone except the one person she'd promised to share it with. And somehow, that hurt even more than the lies. I stayed at Jake's apartment for another 4 days. Emma texted every morning, every night. Sometimes it was a simple, "Can we talk?" Other times it was paragraphs explaining how she had never planned for any of this to happen. I read every message. I answered none of them. Not because I wanted to punish her, because I didn't know what to say. One sentence kept replaying in my head. I honestly don't know. That had been her answer when I asked if she ever planned to tell me. If she didn't know, there wasn't much left for us to discuss. On Friday, I met with a divorce attorney. Walking into his office felt surreal. 6 weeks earlier, I would have laughed if someone told me I'd be sitting there. He didn't ask about Ryan. He didn't ask about the party. He asked practical questions. Any children? No. Joint accounts? Yes. Who wants to keep the house? I don't know. He nodded while making notes. You don't have to decide today. I know. Some people come here looking for revenge. He closed the folder. Most just want peace. That sentence stayed with me all the way home. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. The problem was I no longer knew if peace existed inside my marriage. That evening, Emma called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. Hi. Her voice was quiet. I know you blocked my calls. I didn't block them. You just stopped answering. There's a difference. She took a slow breath. I emailed you. I read it. And? I believe you. She sounded confused. You do? I believe you never slept with Ryan. I heard her crying before she spoke again. Thank you. But, she already knew there was a but. I also believe you built another relationship while telling yourself it didn't count. She didn't argue. I did. I believe every time you lied, it became easier to lie again. I know. I believe you protected him before you protected us. Silence. Then she whispered, I hate hearing that because it's true. The next afternoon, we agreed to meet one last time. A small park, middle of the day, no restaurants, no crowds, no audience. Emma looked exhausted, not from crying, from carrying everything she'd been trying to hide. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. I've been trying to figure out when everything changed. I already know. You do? The day you stopped bringing your problems home. She looked at me. I brought them to everyone else. I nodded. Ryan. The gym. Taryn. Anybody who would listen. You never brought them to me. She stared at the ground. I convinced myself you wouldn't understand. Did you ever actually try? No. Why? I don't know. You do. She closed her eyes. I was afraid. Of what? That you'd tell me we were just busy. And if I had, then I'd still be lonely. I looked across the lake. But at least you would have given me the chance. She nodded. I know. She reached into her purse and handed me an envelope. What's this? I printed everything. Inside were screenshots, old text messages, emails, calendar invites. She had even highlighted dates. I deleted some messages. I know. I recovered what I could. I looked at her. Why? Because I'm tired of deciding which parts of the truth you deserve. That was probably the most honest thing she'd said since this started. I folded the papers and slid them back into the envelope. I don't need them. You don't? I already know enough. She looked disappointed. I thought maybe if you saw everything, it wouldn't change anything. She nodded slowly. I know. A cold breeze moved across the lake. Emma hugged her arms. I've spent the whole week thinking about Ryan. I waited. I don't actually miss him. I looked at her. I miss who I was pretending to be. That caught me off guard. What does that mean? With him? She searched for the words. I wasn't someone's wife with bills and responsibilities. I wasn't worried about work. I wasn't thinking about laundry or mortgage payments. I got to be 22 again. She laughed once. It wasn't really Ryan. It was the version of myself I thought I'd lost. I understood exactly what she meant. That didn't excuse it, but it explained it. You know what the problem is? She nodded before I finished. I chased that feeling instead of fixing my marriage. Yeah. She looked at me for a long time. Is there anything I can do? The question sat between us. A month earlier, I probably would have listed conditions. Counseling, complete honesty, no contact with Ryan, transparency. Now, none of it mattered. I don't think so. She closed her eyes. I figured. I don't hate you. I know. I think you made hundreds of little choices that led us here. I did. I don't think you meant to destroy our marriage. I didn't. But you stopped protecting it. A tear rolled down her cheek. I know. That was the strange part. For the first time since the anniversary party, we weren't arguing anymore. There was nothing left to defend, nothing left to prove, just consequences. When we stood to leave, Emma hesitated. I never thanked you. For what? For never trying to make everyone hate me. I frowned. I could have. I know. You didn't. I looked at her. Hating you would have been easier. She swallowed. But it wouldn't have fixed anything. She nodded. I hope someday you remember more than how this ended. I thought about that. I probably will. Then I walked back to my truck. Halfway there, I realized something I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't angry anymore. I was sad. There was a difference. Anger makes you want answers. Sadness arrives after you've already found them. And I finally had. The divorce papers sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I signed them. Not because I was hoping something would change, because 6 years is a long time to fit into a signature. Every time I walked past the envelope, I remembered a different version of us. The first apartment with mismatched furniture. Our honeymoon when our flight got canceled and we spent the night on airport chairs laughing at how miserable we looked, painting the living room ourselves because we were too cheap to hire anyone. The day we got the keys to the house. None of those memories disappeared because the marriage ended. That almost made everything harder. Eventually, I picked up the pen and signed. Then I drove the papers to my attorney's office. He looked through them, clipped them together, and said, "I'll take it from here." Just like that. Years of marriage became another file on another desk. Emma moved back into the house while we waited for everything to become official. I rented a small apartment 15 minutes away. The first night there was strangely quiet. No television in the background. No dog barking at the mail carrier. No one asking what I wanted for dinner. I ordered Chinese food, unpacked 2 boxes, and sat on the floor because I hadn't bought a couch yet. For the first time in weeks, nobody expected anything from me. It felt lonely. It also felt peaceful. I'd almost forgotten those two feelings could exist at the same time. A few days later, Jake stopped by carrying a folding chair. I looked at it. You know, chairs already exist, right? You own exactly 0 of them. He said it in the middle of the living room. There. Now your apartment looks intentional. I laughed for the first time since the anniversary party. You've always had terrible decorating ideas. Maybe. He looked around. But you're laughing. He was right. Not because anything had improved, because life had started moving again. About 2 weeks later, Emma called. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. Hey. Hi. She sounded calmer than she had in weeks. I just wanted to tell you something. Okay. I told Ryan not to contact me again. I leaned against the kitchen counter. I figured that would have happened already. It should have. She paused. I kept thinking ending that friendship would somehow fix everything. It won't. I know. She let out a slow breath. I wasn't calling because I expected it to. There wasn't much else to say. Before hanging up, she quietly added, I've been trying to understand why I kept choosing the easier conversation instead of the right one. I answered honestly. I hope you figure it out. I think I'm starting to. The house sold faster than either of us expected. Apparently, the market was still good. We met one Saturday morning to finish packing the garage before the buyers took possession. Most of it was easy. Tools, holiday decorations, camping equipment we barely used. Then Emma found a plastic storage bin labeled Pictures. She smiled sadly. I forgot these were out here. We carried the box into the empty living room. Every room echoed now. It barely felt like our house anymore. Inside were hundreds of printed photos. Vacations, birthdays, family cookouts, Christmas mornings, our wedding. Emma picked up one from our honeymoon. We looked exhausted. We were. We slept in the airport and ate vending machine sandwiches. She laughed. They were awful. They really were. For several minutes, we kept turning pages. Neither of us cried, neither of us argued. We simply remembered. Finally, Emma closed the box. I'm glad those years happened. I looked at her. So am I. She seemed surprised. I thought you'd say you wished we'd never met. No. I shook my head. I wish we'd fought harder for us before someone else became part of the conversation. She lowered her eyes. So do I. As we walked toward our cars, Emma stopped. Can I ask you one question? Sure. When did you know it was over? I thought about it. She probably expected me to say the anniversary party, or Ryan, or the messages. Instead, I answered honestly. The moment you said nothing physical happened. She frowned. Why? Because I never asked. She stared at me. You answered the question you were most afraid of. I opened my truck door. That told me you'd already been having the argument with yourself for a long time. She didn't try to deny it. She couldn't. I think you're right. That night, Jake called. So, "So, you okay?" "I think so." He laughed. "I've been waiting months to hear you say that. I'm not happy. I know. But I'm okay." There was a long pause. Then he said, "You know what I'm glad about?" "What?" "You finally stopped trying to solve a puzzle after you already had the picture." I smiled. For weeks I'd been chasing details, exact dates, exact conversations, trying to figure out the precise moment everything fell apart. Jake was right. It didn't matter anymore. I already knew enough. The divorce became official a little over 3 months after the anniversary party. There wasn't a courtroom fight. Nobody argued over who got the better lawyer. Neither of us wanted to spend months turning bad memories into expensive ones. We split the savings, sold the house, closed the joint accounts, signed everything that needed signing. The legal part ended quietly. The emotional part took longer. I moved into a townhouse closer to work. It wasn't nearly as nice as our old place, but it was enough. 1 bedroom, small garage, a patio just big enough for a grill. For the first few weeks, I kept reaching for my phone whenever something funny happened. I'd see a ridiculous license plate or a dog hanging its head out of a truck window and instinctively think, Emma would laugh at that. Then I'd remember. Eventually, those moments stopped happening. Not because I forgot her, because my life slowly became mine again. Jake refused to let me spend every weekend alone. One Saturday, he showed up before 8 in the morning. "Get dressed." "Why?" "We're playing basketball." "I haven't played in years." "Exactly." 20 minutes later, I was getting embarrassed by a group of accountants in their 40s. Halfway through the first game, I bent over with my hands on my knees trying to catch my breath. One of the guys laughed. "You okay?" "I've made terrible decisions recently." Jake almost fell over laughing. On the drive home, he looked at me. "I haven't heard you joke in months." Neither had I. Healing wasn't dramatic. It wasn't waking up one morning suddenly feeling better. It was laughing without realizing you had. It was buying groceries without automatically grabbing someone else's favorite cereal. It was making plans because you wanted to, not because you were trying to repair something. Those little moments added up. About 6 months later, I received a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're doing well." I knew who it was before I opened it. Emma. She had changed phone plans after the divorce. I thought about ignoring it. Instead, I replied, "I'm doing okay. Hope you are too." She asked if we could talk for a few minutes. I called her that evening. She sounded different, calmer, less defensive. "I started therapy." "I'm glad." "I should have done it years ago." I leaned back on my couch. "How's it going?" She laughed quietly. "My therapist asked me a question I couldn't answer." "What was it?" "When did you start protecting your secrets more than your marriage?" I didn't say anything. I realized I knew the answer immediately. "When?" "The day I changed my phone passcode." She sighed. I told myself it was because of work. It wasn't. No, it was because I didn't want to feel nervous every time you picked up my phone. I stared out the window. Cars rolled through the intersection below. People were heading home from work. Life kept moving. I spent months convincing myself emotional boundaries didn't matter because nothing physical had happened. Her voice became quieter. I finally understand how wrong that was. I believed her. Not because she was asking for another chance. She wasn't. She was simply telling the truth without trying to protect herself. I wish I'd understood sooner. I know. I'm sorry. I know. We talked another minute about ordinary things. Her new apartment, my promotion, the weather. Then we wished each other well and hung up. That was the last time we've spoken. About a year after everything happened, Jake invited me to another cookout. Different house, different people. Someone eventually asked why I wore no wedding ring. Jake looked at me, silently checking whether I wanted to answer. I shrugged. I got divorced. The conversation moved on. Nobody asked for details. Nobody wanted gossip. Driving home that night, I realized something. For months, I'd believed my divorce would become the thing people remembered about me. It didn't. Everyone else had already continued living their lives. Eventually, I did too. People still ask me if I regret what I did at the anniversary party. Some think handing my wedding ring to Ryan was childish. Maybe it was. Some think I should have handled everything privately. Maybe they're right. But I don't regret forcing the truth into the open. That ring didn't end my marriage. It simply exposed how far it had already drifted. Looking back, Ryan wasn't really the reason my marriage failed. He became part of it because there was already space for him. That doesn't excuse his choices. He should have walked away much sooner. But the responsibility for protecting our marriage was never his. It was ours. Emma didn't lose our marriage in one terrible decision. She lost it in dozens of small ones. One conversation she chose to have with someone else. One coffee she didn't tell me about. One deleted message. One lie that felt easier than an honest conversation. One passcode change. One canceled dinner. None of those moments ended the marriage by themselves. Together, they slowly replaced trust with secrecy. By the time someone joked about a backup husband, the damage had already been done. For a long time, I wondered whether I could have saved us if I'd noticed sooner. Maybe. Maybe not. I've stopped asking myself that. The better question is whether two people are still protecting the same relationship. By the time I learned the answer to that, mine had already been over for months. If there's one thing I took from all of it, it's this. Most marriages don't collapse because of one unforgettable moment. They fall apart when honesty becomes harder than comfort, when someone starts sharing the best parts of themselves somewhere else, and when silence slowly replaces the conversations that matter most. You rarely notice it happening while you're living it. You only see the pattern after someone finally says the quiet part out loud. For me, that happened at my own anniversary party. By then, everyone else already knew the joke. I was just the last person to understand why everyone was laughing.